And this evening, one of the most respected law enforcement officers of his generation. For 9 years, Colin Sutton was the senior investigating officer for the Metropolitan Police. During his stint, Sutton led more than 30 successful murder investigations, including two of the most infamous cases in British history. Sutton tenaciously and relentlessly pursued serial killer Levi Bellfield, as well as serial rapist Delroy Grant, a man known as the Night Stalker. He brought both men to justice. Sutton's memories about the two cases were chronicled in two best-selling books called Manhunt and have been turned into a very popular TV series of the same name, starring Martin Clunes. But Colin Sutton is far more handsome, and he joins me in the studio now. Colin, great to have you with us.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
Very excited about the new series which is coming, and it's on the Sky Crime Channel, which I do watch a fair bit, and it's called The Real Manhunter. Starts on Monday at 9.
Yeah, it's the third series, looking at murder cases like the other two have been. But our unique take is that we do it from the point of view of the investigators and the victims. It's not about the perpetrators with us. It's not glorifying them. It's what effect do these horrendous crimes have on the people who suffer from them and the people who try to pick up the pieces.
Oh, well, that's a very important perspective to have. Let's talk about the most high-profile person that you successfully brought to justice, Levi Bellfield. Convicted of 2 murders and 1 attempted murder before being later convicted of the 2002 killing of 13-year-old Milly Dowler. What were the nature of these crimes? What did he do exactly?
Well, he was in the habit of attacking women who he'd propositioned from a car. He had a means of working where he followed buses and could see, potential victims, and he would follow the buses until they got off and then choose his moment and proposition them.
So he'd spot perhaps a young woman on her own on the bus,
yes,
and follow her until she got off.
Yeah, okay. Because at night there were lights down by the exits of the bus, and he could see them waiting to get off, and he'd then go and make some suggestion to them, which invariably they declined, and when they did that, he would attack them.
And you talk about this guy's personality. He was mercurial. He could be charming and witty at one point, and then extremely aggressive seconds later.
Yeah. I mean, the number of statements we took in the investigation that started, I had a relationship with Levi Bellfield, and you start to think, how? Why? But the answer was, he was very charming, very plausible, had the gift of the gab, if you like, at first. And then once he'd got you ensnared, he'd strike.
And what motivated him? Was it just a desire to murder vulnerable young women? Was he motivated sexually? What drove this guy?
I think there was certainly a sexual motive in the propositioning that started off, but there was no sexual element to the murders. That was purely spite, anger.
I understand it was CCTV and phone records that helped catch him, and some good old-fashioned detective work on your part.
On my team's part, I have to say, there were a lot of them, and I had some incredibly talented people that did the work that meant, we had no forensic evidence. We had no DNA, no blood, no fibres, nothing like that. It was a case of circumstantial evidence, but when you get enough of that, then it can prove compelling, and that's what it did. But that was 3.5 years of solid investigation by a really talented team.
Looking at someone like this person, are people like Bellfield, are they born evil, or is it to do with upbringing and early life? What do you think?
I don't like to give an opinion because it's not really my bag, the psychology, and people sometimes sort of blanch when I say this, but I don't really care why they did it. I was just trying to prove who did it and when they did it, But I think with him, he was a strange person from a very early age, and we know that. And he had a very kind of unusual relationship with his mother, at the end of the day, he was probably just the most narcissistic, self-obsessed, self-absorbed person nothing mattered to him other than himself. And so any niceties around the law or respect for other people, particularly for women, were just completely lost.
Which could be characterised as a mental illness or perhaps a personality disorder of sorts, do you think?
Yeah, I think certainly a personality disorder. I'd hesitate to say he was mentally ill. He knew what he was doing. You know, there's no question that he was, you know, not in control of what he was doing when he carried out these crimes. But he had personality defects times 10, yeah.
Could somebody like that rehabilitate? Could somebody like that ever change?
I don't know, but from what I know about that individual, I don't believe he ever could.
Bad news for the woman he's about to marry. In June, he was granted the right to marry in prison. Is that appropriate, do you think? No,
I think it's entirely and wholly inappropriate, but not for the reason that many people might think. You know, most people have said, oh, he's serving 4 whole life tariffs, which he is, so we shouldn't allow him to murder, as if it's part of the punishment and part of him being, you know, incarcerated. For me, the big issue is that how can somebody who is serving 4 whole life tariffs for abusing, assaulting, murdering women be in a position where from behind bars he can influence another woman's life to the extent that she wants to marry him? And that's what we want. You know, we work hard, my team worked hard, we put him away to keep people safe. That's the best thing we did, was to actually prevent him assaulting and injuring and abusing hundreds of women in the future. And yet we're still allowing it from behind bars.
It's crazy. I understand the government and the Home Office want to close that loophole. Can't come too soon. You also caught the Night Stalker, somebody called Delroy Grant. By the time you took over the case, this guy had been active for a decade.
17 years.
17 years in total?
17 years.
So what did he do? Tell us about the nature of his crimes.
He used to creep around at night, spotting elderly people living alone, mostly women, but occasionally men. He would break into their house, he would wake them up to talk to them. So just imagine the terror. You're in your 80s, you're alone in your bed, and you're awoken by having a black-clad, masked figure kneeling on you astride and shining a torch in your face. That's what he was doing. And then occasionally he would sexually assault them, and very occasionally he would rape them. He would steal a small amount of jewellery or cash, nothing special, not huge amounts of money. And I'm sure for him it was all about the power. It was all about wielding the power and being able to sit there. Sometimes for 2-3 hours he would sit there talking to these people in their 80s who were terrified. You know, of course they were terrified. And some of them, you know, they never went back to the house where it happened.
Most definitely not, and will have hastened their passing in many cases.
Absolutely.
I would have thought.
He was never charged with murder, but he killed people.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
How do you go about striking a happy work-life balance when you've had to deal with these cases? Is it difficult not to bring your work home with you?
I'd never found it that difficult, personally, but I think, you know, that's just me. I kind of had this compartmentalisation in my mind from an early stage. This is home, this is me, this is my life, that's what happens at work.
But would not get you down?
No, occasionally not. I mean, occasionally when I realise that I'm, you know, when someone dies, I'm the go-to man for the eulogy. When you know, things happen in friends and family and tragedies happen, people sort of expect that I'll deal with it, and I generally do, and you know, because they think I'm hardened to it. But of course, when it's people that you know and it's friends or family, then you have to have that time to reflect and that time to mourn yourself. So, you know, I can't keep that going all the time. But so sometimes that worries me. Did it harden me too much? Am I too much that way? But essentially, I had a job to do which I loved doing, and I think I did to the best of my ability and made a difference. And that's all I wanted to do when I started. You know.
It's a great legacy. You obviously have an amazing skill set. But do you have a gut instinct as well? Can you have a sense when somebody's lying, or if perhaps, you know, you're in the company of a variety of suspects, you're thinking it's probably that guy in the corner? Do you have a sixth sense?
I wouldn't call it a sixth sense, but I think I always say that being a detective is about understanding people. And so you're looking at a set of circumstances and you're saying, OK, how might that person have reacted in those circumstances? What's likely to have happened? Who's likely to have done that? How's it happened in that way? And I think that is something that you can't teach, and that's something that people do either have or don't have, and they can enhance it over their life with experience. But yeah, it's about understanding people and forming, even Delroy Grant, I knew what he'd done, how despicable he was. I had a lovely conversation with him about cricket in the charge room. And you need to do that. You need to put in the back of your mind what these people have done, because you've got to relate to them, you've got to talk to them. That's your job.
Because you've got a job to do, and my goodness, you've done it so well.